Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Manzila Paula Uddin. I'm a member of the House of Lords and a great supporter of Cordoba's various initiatives. I should declare an interest that I've had the privilege of having support from Cordoba in my office as volunteers, so I should make that quite clear at the outset. I understand that you've had a very, very good morning. It's what should be the outcome of the panel is already well stated, and I'm sure the agenda has already been set. But it's really to look at, and we have very eminent speakers, and I shall kick off with one of them very shortly, but it's the impact of repressive measures targeting the Brotherhood globally. I think the statement says plenty, and almost nothing else needs to be said except what are we going to do about it. So it gives me great pleasure to invite Professor Yasin Aktay, who is the Deputy Chairman of the AK Party in Turkey. You all have a biography on there, so you will forgive me, I'm not going to go into details. You all have, Professor, you have 10 minutes, okay. If you'd like to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I already make my representation before noon, and now the issue is the impact of repressive measures targeting the Brotherhood globally, and of course targeting the Muslim Brotherhood targetly is a very special targeting, but it is not to be separated from the measures taken against the idea of Islamism, against the idea of Islam at all in general, because the criminalizing the political Islam, as I mentioned before, is very interesting process, because as I said, the idea of political, or the word political, when it comes converge with Islam, becomes suddenly very dangerous. What is that fair from the political? What is that fair from the idea of political? Is it political? Is it wrong when out of the context of any Islamic, discussion, when anybody is asked about the idea of political, nobody say anything wrong, anything negative about the political. Political is good. It's part of the life. It helps people to talk together, make something very open to discussion, and it's a very civilian activity actually. And the word political is coming from the Greek words when the Aristotle defined the man as zoon politikon. That means that man is become man just by politics. But when if so, what is wrong with political Islam? And I couldn't have the opportunity to explore my idea when I said that in Turkey, the Kurdish issue, when it was represented only by the armed groups, so-called terrorist groups in Turkey, PKK. Nothing was wrong with this. And the Turkish government was fighting it, and the Turkish army was fighting it in the mountains. But when some discussions or some ideas were entered to the scene, and many people began to talk about politicization of the Kurdish issue. Politicization of the Kurdish issue. And I said, what is wrong with this? That's good. Instead of fighting, instead of killing each other, let's do politics. Politics is not wrong. But our image or cliche about political Islam is that political Islam we equate the political Islam with Taliban or with probably ISIL. Actually, there is nothing political in ISIL. ISIL is not a political movement. It is a revengist movement, and it came out of some context, some social context, probably some distorted political context, not some political context. It is not coming out of a political context, because it just came out of the absence of political context in Iraq. There is no political context, so there is ISIS is coming. and because there was there was a government which was discriminating against the Sunnis in Iraq, and there was also invasion of the coalition which was led by United States, and this created 1 million deaths. Can you imagine an invasion come to a country and cause 1 million people? Can you discriminate? Can you distinguish between who is innocent and who is not? Who is armed or who is not? You are bombing the civilians, you are bombing the cities. When you are bombing the cities, many people, related or unrelated, relevant or irrelevant people are being targeted, and many pain, too much pain, came out of this bombing. And out of this bombing, now we have the mood is being shaped, the atmosphere is being shaped, and many revenges. We are suffering as from Turkey, from the Kurdish issue. What is our problem now? That we cannot change the history, we cannot change the past, unfortunately. When the Kurdish issue was created by the Turkish government with violent way only, and it created too much pain on the irrelevant Kurdish people, and those irrelevant Kurdish people all were transformed into militant Kurdish people. Not in political Kurdish people. There is no political Kurdish movement in Turkey now. There is political movement, that is, we have no problem with that. We have no problem with the political Kurdish movement at all. We have no problem, we should not have any problem with any political movement. Political movement, if you are self-confident, if you are open, an open democracy, and you should be ready for facing many such movements, etc. And the Islamic movements, I think that doesn't mean that you should change everything. You should change radically and create an utopia in this world. I think that is Zionism. Zionism is to create a world from nothing. And when you try to create that world, you are fight against everybody, against the world. But if some part of the world is tolerating you, as it is now in the world, unfortunately nobody says political Judaism or political movement or militant Judaism, which is creating too much pain, too much violence, too much terrorism. And now, for example, if Hamas as part of Muslim Brotherhood or as extension of Muslim Brotherhood is accused to be terrorist, where is Israel? And in Turkey we have a very good fıkra nedir? Proverb, yes. Nasreddin Hoca, Joha Nasreddin, when he bring some meat, 2 kilos meat, he sent it to his house and ask his wife to cook it. When he come to house and he asked his wife, where is the cook? He said the cat ate it. The meat, yes. He said he looked at the meat, at the cake, and he bring the measure it. He said it is 2 kilos. The cat is 2 kilos. If it is cat, where is the meat? If it is meat, where is the cat? You see, that is also. If this is, if this is terrorism, where is Israel? It is Israel. Where is? And even in 1 month, they created and they targeted the civilians in the cities. About 2,300 people were killed by this bombing, and nobody asked about. They talk about the self-defense right of the Israel. If that is self-defense of the right of the Israel, where is the self-defense right of the Palestinians? Are they not human? Are they not people? Are they not? Where is the? I think this is very unfair language which is prevailing the world now, and we should question this. Actually, we should not be apologizing. We have no reason to be apologizers. We have the right to be apologized. And we have, I think, the Muslim world now which have the right to be apologized. But let's do. It's another problem. But the Muslim Brotherhood now is trying to be. I think that is very, very, very painful. Experience when Mohammed Mursi came out of an election, and he suddenly started to be questioned why he wouldn't change anything. In 1 year, he couldn't complete 1 year, and he was asked about why you didn't we didn't create an utopia in Egypt. You are failing, and people and the Islamism also was being criticized that Islamism came to power and they couldn't change this, and they began again to talk about the end of Islamism, the failure of Islamism, the bankruptcy of Islamism, etc. Actually, that is very a language which is using very unfair measures against the Islamists. And the Muslim Brotherhood, as far as we know, is now being criticized by the young generations for not holding or affording the issues in more efficient way. So I think what is going on in Egypt now is, I mean, the coup d'etat and the attitude of the stand of the Western countries or many other countries toward this coup d'etat is creating a very revanchist mood among the young generations, among the more not necessarily young but some other generations to deviate to more, not to say deviate. I think that is a very natural sociological reaction to create more doors or more. Is this okay? More doors to organizations or to movements like ISIL or any other movements named in another way, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you're absolutely right. We have to question the narrative that has been defined very easily, very slowly, and into the mainstream language. May I now ask, I have to see who's on this first. I think it's Alastair Sloan, who is a journalist both for Al Jazeera and The Guardian, and I said he knows everything that is about to happen because he works with both those channels of communication. Yeah. Let's see what's happening. What
I wish you could see my notes, because literally the first sentence is not going to predict the future. Oh. So I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to predict the future because it's a very unpredictable time in the region. So what I'm going to try and do is offer an analysis of why the West's role in the oppression of the Brotherhood is tolerated, and I want to approach also the tolerance within Egypt of the Brotherhood's oppression. And to do that, I want to talk about public sympathy or lack of public sympathy. So there were geopolitical reasons why the Brotherhood, for example, was investigated by Number 10 at the behest of the Saudis. Sorry. At the behest of the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates, geopolitical reasons and trade reasons. But I think we have to think about how is the government allowed to get away with this. If the government were to investigate a Jewish group or a Sikh group or a Hindu group or any political group, there would be public outcry. The background to all this is Islamophobia, which is the way that our government is allowed to get away with this. And it effectively gives them a democratic mandate to oppress the Brotherhood because people are so Islamophobic in this country, which is I'm ashamed of. UKIP, who don't want any mosques being built in this country apparently. Across Europe, you've got a third of Italians backing the Northern League, who are anti-immigration and fervently anti-Muslim. Pegida, the German organisation you'll be aware of, who had tens of thousands of people protesting the Islamification. I wasn't able to say that because it's not a word, but you know. Merkel asked the German intelligence services to investigate Pegida, and they came back and they said, well, what they're saying is pretty horrible, but there's 10,000 of them in the streets and we can't arrest all of them. Which gives you an idea of the scale. Front National, who coined this horrible word, kebabization. Again, it's difficult to say because it's made up. You know, so what you're getting is basically you're getting institutionalized Islamophobia. You're getting political parties who are happy to express the kind of sentiments that were very common in Europe in the 1930s. And then you've got more sophisticated elements such as think tanks in Westminster. So one of them, the Henry Jackson Society, which is an extraordinarily influential group in Westminster, with Michael Gove as a trustee, 15 MPs, half a dozen peers. Douglas Murray, who is their executive director, has said that life for Muslims must be made harder across the board, has a column for The Spectator, and I'm very frustrated when I turn on the Daily Politics and he's a regular guest. I mean, you'll be aware of all this, but it's just to kind of put the Muslim Brotherhood's persecution in context. This is the situation that we have created. I think Baroness Wasi put it incredibly well when she said that it's now past the dinner party test. So it's now it's the middle class who are capable of doing this. Some of the middle class. So the results of this are the UK investigation into the Brotherhood, which has found nothing to suggest links to violence. The reason I'm so confident in saying that is that French intelligence have also reportedly investigated the Brotherhood and have published their report saying that they found nothing. So it was clearly a political move. It's worth considering that David Cameron admits to being naive on foreign policy. Said to his advisors at the beginning of his term in office that he knew very little about the world. He knew a lot about Brussels and Westminster, but he needed help on world politics. And it was very canny how the Saudis and the Emirati rulers went directly to number 10. They didn't go to the Foreign Office, they didn't go to the security services, they went to David Cameron, because he's a very easy man to pull the wool over his eyes. Despite all this Islamophobia, which is quite a depressing view, there is obviously a case for supporting the Brotherhood. And I think it's possible, strangely enough, because of another phenomenon from the Middle East, which is Israel and Zionism and the Israel lobby. So Israel is a fundamentally unjust project which should be incredibly unpopular. If Israel can make themselves popular in the West, so can the Muslim Brotherhood, because you're not as I'm not going to say not as bad, but you don't have anything on them. I've been the subject of some limited attacks from them, and they are an extraordinarily fearsome organisation. You can despise, as I do, their ideology and their political views, but the level of professionalism that they apply to Western lobbying is extraordinary. And it's not just finance, it's the legal aspect of it, it's the media, the way they police the media, the way they go after people, and the resources that they have at their disposal. Now, some of those activities are immoral, and I wouldn't recommend going after those, but the professionalism of the Zionist lobby is worth studying as a model for how to shrug off this oppression in the West. Now, there are two points that I want to make about the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and the oppression that they're suffering there, which is horrific. I mean, it is horrific, but you go to Egypt recently, and it's an uncomfortable truth that Sisi does enjoy a large section of society with which he's popular. And the Muslim Brotherhood there was a lot of sympathy for the Muslim Brotherhood back in 2011 when they had suffered enormously throughout the military dictatorships and had kind of come out of it and then were seen as an alternative. And that sympathy, the reality is, has ebbed away. And without that sympathy, the persecution of the Brotherhood in Egypt, again, Sisi is to an extent getting away with it. Now, speaking to Egyptians who have changed their minds about the Brotherhood, one of the key messages that they give me is a sense that faults were not apologised for. And to demonstrate this point, I want to look at some of the press releases that are on the Brotherhood's official website from recent months. So is the Muslim Brotherhood going to apologise for things that they're perceived to have done wrong? November 2013, Muslim Brotherhood statement calls for unity, acknowledges mistakes. That sounds quite positive. The next line, Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood declares its agreement to unify efforts and for everyone to recognise their mistakes. So actually it's not the Brotherhood apologising, they're asking everyone to apologise. Today, everyone knows that all parties made big mistakes, so now it's everyone's done it, while one party trusted, another party collaborated. So you're kind of shifting the blame across everyone. January 2014, the Muslim Brotherhood recognises its mistakes. We cannot exonerate ourselves of the mistake we made when we trusted the military council. We also made the mistake of trusting the judiciary. So again, the Muslim Brotherhood is apologising, but they are apologising for people who betrayed them. Dr. Mohammed Basir, November 2013, talking about errors to be corrected requires a review by all parties, but do not ask the Brotherhood alone to review their positions and leave others. We call on everyone to review their stances and experiences. It's a fair point, but the Brotherhood was in government. The Brotherhood should apologise. Dr. Mahmoud Hussein, Muslim Brotherhood Secretary General, reports about a message attributed to Dr. Salah Sultan, the well-known preacher, in which he apologised to the Egyptian people for what he called errors made by the group. Sounds promising. The message, assuming it is authentic, said the Brotherhood statement, is simply an expression of his personal opinion, thus it does not reflect the group's point of view. It's a point-blank refusal to apologise. Sorry. Now, Human Rights Watch published a report about Sisi's oppression of the Brotherhood, specifically Rabah. Absolutely correct. The oppression was worse than what happened under Morsi, but Human Rights Watch also had severe problems with what Morsi did. And people in Egypt are concerned about that, and the lack of apology from the Muslim Brotherhood is contributing to a degradation in sympathy, which is meaning that the oppression of your brothers in prison is going to a certain extent not unnoticed, but unsympathised with. And it's a reality. The second point is ambiguity, so I'm going to race through these. There's still some ambiguity on exactly what the vision is for the Brotherhood. Is the vision to have an overall Islamic state? What does that mean for Egypt? Are we voting for something where the Brotherhood are using Egypt as a stepping stone? How does it fit with nationalism? A lot of ambiguity around that. Religious minorities, somebody mentioned earlier. Genuine fear amongst Copts of the Muslim Brotherhood. A lot of work that needs to be done to resolve that ambiguity of Muslim Brotherhood policy. And violence. There is an unjustified propagandized attack on the Muslim Brotherhood to associate them with violence in the Sinai. But you have to recognize that a lot of people do not believe that the Brotherhood has renounced violence. It's just it's realpolitik. And from a Western point of view, you have to step outside the bubble, as it were, and recognise that supporting Hamas, which is fine, I'm a supporter as well, is not going to sit well with nearly everyone outside of this community. It's not going to sit well. They are seen as a terrorist organisation. Suicide bombings, bus bombings, school bombings, these are the first things that come to people's mind. Again, it's because of the efficiency of the Israel lobby. But this ambiguity around the association with violence is a key problem with maintaining public sympathy. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Although you know what you've said, everything is on record. I think your point is well made about the fact that we really have huge lessons to learn from the Zionist lobby, and I think that your assessment of how it's viewed and the context of legitimized Islamophobia is really very important, hits home. Can I ask Ismail Patel, who is the chairman and founding member of the Al-Aqsa, which is an UK-based NGO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for Cordoba for arranging this event. Thanks to my two colleagues here as well. Now, I think the title is quite provocative, and it's quite simple in a sense as well. If I was to just list the impact of the repressive measures, then I could sort of say that we're a front to fire. Muslim Brotherhood has been a front to a firewalling against Al-Qaeda or extremism. It was a means towards buying in the street towards democracy, the values of the West, and so forth. But that would be too simple. I want to take you on a journey with me. Some of these ideas are exploratory, and it's both historical and contemporary. So if it feels a bit disjointed, do forgive me. But let's start with the contemporary world. We find ourselves in a world that is split between three coordinates. The first of which is the realization that the European power, imperialist and colonialist power that started Columbus 1492, ended in 1945. So we have a residue of that history behind us. There is also a precarious and to a varying degree some sort of hegemony by the United States of America and the globe. It is not absolute. That's the second factor that is prevalent. And the third factor is the second phase of the decolonization of the third world. It's a second phase. And before I come to the second phase factor, I want to take you back now, that when we look at history, and particularly European discursive history, and look at slavery in particular, when slavery was attempted to be abolished, the first narrative, it was the West, in particular Wilberforce was the man who helped end slavery. Not the fact that it became economically unviable, not the fact that the black man had risen up and he no longer wanted to be called a slave or a Negro. It was the white man who saved the black man. That's the first aspect. But more importantly than that, was the Bible was raised, and Bible was the most powerful instrument of the day rather than democracy as it is today in the 18th century, so that they could civilize the uncivilized barbarian, the savage. The reality is, and I would urge each and every one of you to go and look at your textbooks and do some research, more people died post the abolition of slavery than during and before the slavery. How did that happen? Why did that second phase, which I want to bring back to the decolonization second phase, create such savagery? Because of the mindset of the enlightened mind that through the Bible they were going to civilize the savages. But when the savages refused the Bible, they became a prey that could be eliminated. You look at Tasmania, the whole of the indigenous population was wiped out. You look at the United States of America. The Holocaust was first exercised upon African Namibians before in Europe itself. Millions of people. In India, not as in West, as in Indians as in America, India as in the continent, India itself. While they were celebrating King Victoria's Jubilee, 12 million people starved to death while they transported the food that was produced in India for Britain. 12 million. Okay. How did this become possible? This was possible because the intellectual factories of the West, the intellectual factories, justified this means to approach that level. Because you require a mindset. You don't need bullets for this. You require a people to undermine other people. And you create a binary, us against them, the civilized against the uncivilized, the barbarians against the enlightened. And this binary has now worked with Islam. This new binary is working towards Islam. So Islam, for whatever it does, however it encapsulates itself, however it dresses itself, wants to dress itself up as, will not in the present intellectual factories that are discharging this garbage be accepted as a norm. So it doesn't matter if Muslim Brotherhood apologizes. It doesn't matter if we come down to our knees and we start wearing three-piece suits with bow ties and we get our sisters to take their hijabs off. It's not enough. It doesn't matter if we practice democracy, because to accept a Muslim to have come to that stage is to put him on parity with the West. And that the binary cannot allow. It is beyond the binary concept. You go beyond that. So the challenge we have, the challenge of the example we can drive from the Muslim Brotherhood's dilemma and concerns And that is, I think, most evident in this world. And I'm not driving towards a class of civilization to Huntington's theory. I think that is very simplistic. I think that would be a trap for us to walk into. But it is something that we have to become concerned about. The fact of the reservation of modernity itself for the West is a right only for the West. Nobody else can be modern. Because for the West to accept that, for others to be modern, means you become equal. And that cannot be right within the realms of the powers that of be. So even within the South and North divide, within the rich and the poor divide, while that is disintegrating, what still maintains is the structure of the Western supremacy. And in here is a problem. Because while these intellectual ideas and thoughts and patterns are predominant, what is happening in the second phase of decolonization is now making apparent that while the West can have an ideological superiority, they do not have an absolute hegemony upon the world. And this fear is a reaction that we are seeing, what we're seeing on the ground. Because the future is unknown. The future becomes difficult. The future is an abyss. And within that abyss is a tiger called Islam, which they don't know which way it will go. So hence, we find ourselves in a very difficult position, and in particular, I think for British Muslims, more than the Muslims of the Middle East, it's imperative to create a narrative upon which the examples more than the language and the practices are emphasized and create a greatest circle of concerns. And that circle of concern must get bigger with time and through events and through practices, so that we buy in people on equality, on same footing. So Muslims, in a way, should be able to say openly and boldly that I am a Muslim, I am an Islamist, like me for what I am, and this is who I am. And if you are just, then you can be able to sell that. If you fail to do that, then you will always remain subsumed. You will always be the secondary. You will always, if not, be the tertiary. And you will never be able to find your position within the platform that you aspire to for humanity to be. Because what we're aiming for is equality and parity. And that equality and parity has a discursive power knowledge-based debate. At the moment that is not allowed, that is not allowed to be shared equally. Those who have it want to make sure they appropriate and keep control to it. And therefore it is the duty of Muslims and all just people who wish to see equity to move into that platform and bring about that justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know, that's quite a bleak picture. I mean, I know that we're living through this time of bleakness. I wish you'd said a little bit more about the narrative which is now being adapted by our younger generations. I mean, I think that there was kind of element of hope. I'm 55 and I came here when I was 13, so I was rather saddened by that, and I hope that you will work on the defining further what that narrative is in the absence of the fact that many of us aren't going to be able to have this, how you describe the relationship between what happens with previous oppressions, suppressions, and colonization and second colonization. I mean, I've always held those views anyway, but I've been able to repress them and try and work my way through up and look for ways to work. But I think at the moment, given the current onslaught, and I think it's definitely an onslaught, it is much more difficult. So I maybe said too much. I mean, I've always held this thing, and every year I write this in my diary, top of the first page, and I say that when injustice become laws, resistance become duty. I don't know who wrote it, Voltaire or I don't know, someone. I don't know who. I don't really care the nationality of that, whoever wrote it, but it wrote my thoughts. So I think that that's maybe how our younger children and our brothers and our children are feeling. The room is open for question now for 10 minutes, so we have to finish by, okay. I'm going to take the gentleman at the back. Can we do 3 questions at a time, and then if you take notes, we'll come back, please. Sorry. No, please say. Yes, please say who you are, sir.
Yeah, I'm Ahmed Asrafi. I would like to ask questions about the recent panorama, where they introduced a new terminology, which is non-violent extremism, which will paint anyone who's working within the law, within the current law, but he's kind of more active or doing some action, and also with the recent the killing of entire family in the state, and the killing of another family in France after the Charlie Hebdo, and also in France there is a bookkeeper or librarian who have been detained because he have a small flag with La ilaha illallah, which is the normal testimony for all Muslims. So how do we reply or act upon such things?
Well, my question to Mr. Alastair, you mentioned the point of apology, and I'm wondering actually, would it be possible to ask the victim or the oppressed to apologize? Now, the Muslim Brotherhood, no one is here to say that they did not make mistakes, but now they are not in a position to ask them to apologize for mistakes which happened within that year. I think, to be fair, if we want to believe in democracy, we have to wait for them to serve their 4 years, and after that, if the voters actually, if they are not happy, they will lose the election. Recently, the British Parliament actually has voted to recognize Palestine, and while I was discussing the matter with one of the parliamentarians who had that motion, actually, I told him, I think we are the Palestinian people, we deserve an official apology from the British government as a result of the Balfour Declaration. And instead of actually answering me directly, he tried to be more diplomatic and said, let's hope that we will have 2 states now. What I'd like to conclude that is, it's not always actually the right thing, just to offer the direct apology, and I think I'd like to hear from you.
Good point, thank you.
Yeah, just got a question for Professor Aktay. He was basically kind of...
What's your name?
my name is Ergin Yaman. And just basically a question in relation to kind of the demonizing of political Islam. Why we're not talking about political Judaism, political Christianity. Is that kind of because kind of maybe kind of those sort of Christianity or Judaism has basically kind of lost that base of kind of moving kind of societies kind of forward, and Islam is kind of still kind of intact in terms of kind of values and kind of everything, and it's got basically kind of the power to kind of move kind of societies forward. And do you think kind of the Arab Spring was a test kind of by the global entities to see how basically political or how basically willing kind of the society of Middle Eastern countries are in terms of kind of being involved in political life, and that test was carried out, and they basically kind of sue kind of the result.
So are you suggesting that, or are you asking if the Tunisian revolution was instigated by outsiders to test whether democracy would work in the Middle East? Or
it was basically kind of to see kind of the extent of political participation, and then, yeah.
I'm playing devil's advocate, but anyway. Okay, why don't you each take, Professor, maybe you start, and then each of you take the question. Yeah.
Actually, it is very. When the Arab Spring started, many people thought that, or made the analysis that, this is a conspiracy, it's a big conspiracy, because it started from Tunisia, there are somebody behind all this who are planning to make a new Middle East, which is democracy, and there are somebody in the world behind this, especially the world center, the center of the world system, is trying to build a new Middle East, and what happened in Tunisia was part of what was the first step of this, and then the next step in Egypt, next one in Libya, and then in Yemen, and they tried to build a democratic world. I asked why they want to build a democratic world, because they are bored about those dictators, who has bored about these dictators, I asked. And they said, oh, United States. Well, do you think that that is very rational from the United States point of view, that to remove some dictators who are obeying, who are subordinated to them, who are just, who are almost in parallel with all their desires, and just because they bored. And international relations doesn't work in such psychological terms. And I was bored about this and sent him, bring somebody who make me, who will, I will pleased to be with him, etc. No, Hosni Mubarak was very good, but in parallel with all the demands of United States, of the world system, and he was very, even though he was dictators, nobody was unhappy about him. Even if he did any massacre, even if he did any criminal, human criminals, he committed any criminals, nobody cared about him. The problem, or the only sensitivity they were caring about was whether he is working with the in parallel with their plan in Israel. What is the name of Camp David? I mean, in the Camp David plan or not? And actually, when in 2003 in Turkey, the United States, wanted to go to Iraq, and he was refused by the Turkish parliament. The claim was to bring democracy to Iraq, but the Turkish democracy rejected this. I mean, it made an obstacle, and it made a resistance against it. And I remember some criticism made about Turkish democracy. They said, yes, we want democracy in Iraq, but democracy in Turkish is too much. That much democracy is too much, they said. I think they don't care about democracy. Unfortunately, they don't. I wish they care. I wish they care as they claim to be caring. But as far as we know, that is only a claim that we are with democracy, but they don't. I agree with Mr. Ahmed when he said, yes, really, if they say democracy is within their country, it is good, but within the world, among the world countries, it is not. It's still not. We are not prepared to this, because that will make everybody equal, and they are not ready to equality, which will create democracy in the world. In Turkey, we say peace in the world, peace in the country, and peace in the world. Now, peace in the democracy in the world and democracy in the country is too much incompatible now in terms of, I think, Western democracies. I think Western democracies should question themselves. We are in the place of questioning Western democracy. Unfortunately, not the reverse.
Thank you. I think what you say is, I'm just going to add to that. It's now a common language that is used amongst parliamentarians. When you say, what are you doing to develop democracy in different parts of the world, they'll say, well, particularly Middle East, this is a known, accepted, respected narrative, which is that the known democracy, there will be a different kind of democracy in the Middle East. It's not that, one that has been developed and is going to be evolved over maybe another 1,000 years, but it's not its time, so not the UK-based and European-based democracy. So it's a narrative well established.
I'll just come back. So the question was, should the oppressed apologise? So yeah, very fair point. I think you need to differentiate between the oppressed apologising to their oppressor and the oppressed apologising to the people they were representing. So the Palestinians should never have to apologise to the British or to the Israelis. Black communities should never have to apologise to their white slave masters, all the colonial crimes, etc. The point that I'm making is that, the Muslim Brotherhood are oppressed, but there should also be a sense of pride. You're still politicians, But when politicians apologise for their mistakes, they get so much sympathy from the public. If you don't apologise for your mistakes, there's three things that can happen, the three M's. So you can either be seen as a megalomaniac, you're just in love with power and mad. You can be seen as malicious, in that you actually intended wrong, or you can be seen as mendacious, so you're a liar. None of those things are good if you're a politician. But if you do apologise for things and you're honest with yourselves, there were human rights abuses, there were political missteps, apologise for them. You have nothing to lose, you know?
Thank you.
Thanks. Just come to a question from Brother Ahmed. You talk about extremism. I mean, the very concerning thing is there's no definition for extremism. So whether a 5-year-old child, literally mine, your child, who goes to the nursery school, and if the teacher feels that this child looks radicalized to me because he's talking about prayers or something, they can be taken to a prevent officer, and this is not an exaggeration.
I talked about it in
Yes.
the House
Baron,
during counter-terrorism.
somebody who knows about legalism.
Yes.
This is not an exaggeration. It can happen. So it's very, very concerning for Muslims. What is extremism? We don't know. It has to be tested in the courts, unfortunately, and then we will find out. But it's something we need to keep an eye on and something we need to lobby quite strongly against. At least we need to know the definition of what an extremist is. But I think, Argan, your question, I think there's one aspect which is we need to, I think, look towards, is that positive aspects of civility are not easily transposable on those people that are not considered part of the hegemonic structure, whereas the negative aspects are imposed upon them. And let me give you an example. If it's a Muslim who kills anybody, more than likely it will be classified as a terrorist act, more than likely. It doesn't matter the origin, the needs, whatever the iniquities are. But when it's a white person, literally on the skin color, kills a Muslim, that is not a terrorist act.
Srebrenica massacre, yeah.
For all of, even just yesterday, in America, 3 people got gunned down.
Exactly.
They've come out with all sorts of reasons. They've never used the word terrorists, never. And I challenge you, if it was a Muslim, God forbid, it shouldn't happen, killed 3 of white people with bullets in their heads, it would be a terrorist act. So you can see the appropriation of language here, that anything evil cannot be part of this hegemonic structure. And again, this is a long-term project, if you like, of how we have to be able to articulate this within the greater society and try and bring about an understanding of how this sort of thing is actually divisive rather than bringing people together. For a crime has to be a crime. I'm not saying that when one person, both are criminal, whether it's conducted by a Muslim or a non-Muslim. The criminal has to be charged for his criminality. But it's to bring that parity is what we have to work towards. And I think it's extremely important. And I think there's a danger as well as when we have a discussion and debate to fall in a trap of trying to address the narrative that is being presented to us that justifies the occupier or the oppressor. So for the Palestinians, for example, they have a problem of saying, will you recognize Israel, excuse me. And all the Palestinians then end up doing is fighting, avoiding that question. And that seems the rest of your life you're trying to work towards defending your right not to recognize your enemy because you've walked into that trap. What you need to do is go above that to argue on a purely humanitarian. And I give you an example of the Palestinians, somebody who heads a pro-Palestinian organization, is to say that I believe in humanity and equality. And I, as a Palestinian, would like, with you as a Jewish person, stay as an equal person on every piece of land between the sea and the river. Are you prepared to do that? And that is the land I recognize. You change the narrative. Yeah. You bring your own paradigms. And hopefully that can be the way we can shift things and bring about towards how we are thinking.
Thank you, and that's a really important point, and that's really positive note to end on, that we all have responsibility and collective responsibility. I think what's coming out loud and clear that we need to work much more cohesively together to ensure that there's a bigger and larger voice, and I didn't see that very much during the process of counter-terrorism and security bill, which does define now, or is about to define a 3 and a 4-year-old, and I've got grandchildren in school, and that's why I raised this question about how that one person is going to be identified for the rest of his or her life. It's likely to be more him than her, and I've got 3 grandsons. So it's very worrying time, but nevertheless, I think that the fact that we understand what the context is, that we've got such amazing people who are able to give us support and guidance time to time. My apologies that we were not able to take more questions, but we started so late. And there's another one about to begin here, and Alastair is going to moderate one of the sessions. Can I just ask that we give the Professor Alastair a round of applause?